Hello, it's me, Brigitte of ZEN CHIC, bringing to you block number 9 of our Blockheads Quilt Along. When I was invited to be a part of Blockheads Quilt Along again, I pondered a bit on what would I contribute. And I have this certain liking for plus signs. They kind of keep popping up in my quilts. For example, there is It's a Plus quilt, the Plus Factors, the Plus It's Simple, and the Accent Plus quilt. And the newest one is called the Pluses quilt, for which we will, by the way, have a quilt along at the end of June. In short, something crossed my mind. I will contribute a plus block. Obviously, plus symbols look modern, are easy to sew, but they are perfect for me. And consequently, I had to call this block Cross My Mind. You have probably already downloaded the sewing instructions for it. You will find a link also in the description box below. Then let's start. I will approach a large block with a strip sewing technique, and I've already prepared 3 long strips which I now will sew together. I have now pieced my strip set together and I pressed it in a way that my seam allowance point towards the darker fabric. And now I want to cut strip sets from that. But before I start, I make sure that my inner white strip is absolutely 1 inch wide and the complete thing is 3.5 inches on height. And to make my little segments, I love the strip set ruler from Block Lock, because this has such extra guide here, and the guide nests with my seam allowance like that. See, it really has a certain kind of grip, and this makes sure that my cuts are always in the right angle to my seams. So for the first cut is I want to trim that little bit off and make this edge absolutely straight, and then I start cutting the other segment. So now I see my seam is a little bit wonky here and the angle is no longer straight, so that's a good thing with that ruler. I can now adjust that edge a little bit like that to be straight again, and then make my last cut. So like okay, now I have all the 4 strip segments and can start lay out my block. I start with the middle piece, and these will then be my 4 strip sets like that, and here are my corner pieces. So, like that. And now I go to the sewing machine and I start to sew first rows, and then I will be back in a minute. Now I have joined my 3 rows and already pressed them. And when I press, my personal rule is always press towards that piece which has less seam connection. So that one has 2 seams and this none, so obviously I press towards that plain square from both sides. And because I want these rows later to nest here, it was clear that I had to press these seams towards the outer pieces. Now I will go to my sewing machine and join these 3 rows. So I've joined my rows now, and I also pressed seam allowance toward the outer rows. And if we have done everything fine, we should have a 9.5 inch block here. So this measures 9.5, 9.5, 9.5. Yay! Looking good. I think we can call that a success. You know what? I struggled for many years with my seam allowance, and my blocks often get a 16 of an inch or even an 8 of an inch too small. Which doesn't matter if you have a regular grid, because if all are too small, then they fit together again. But I was ambitious and that I want to get that thing under my belt. And once I figured out the right setting on my machine, it's now installed once and for all. And I made a video tutorial out of that, so for you to watch. So for the smaller version, I go with a different approach. Instead of starting with strip sets, I make it totally scrappy and have here all different prints for each of the strips. Actually, I wanted to display these prints to show you, give you a sneak peek of my next upcoming collection, which is called Frisky and will probably ship to stores by the end of this month. So Frisky is a very useful and fun, and as the name says, a frisky thing, and a quilt with these fabrics will give you the perfect summer vibe. So I laid it out in a way that my midpoint has the same colors as the cornerstones. If you sew this block together and you make a bunch of these blocks and put that in a regular grid, you will end up with a kind of checkerboard quilt, and this could probably be your next scrap basket thing. Or you exchange the middle piece with the print to emphasize the plus symbol a little bit more, which I will do for our tutorial here. So what I do now is I start making little units from these strips and piece them together, and then we will go forward exactly in the same manner as with the larger block. I have joined all my little pieces to a unit and have pressed the seam allowance towards the outer piece, and make sure that your measurements are now exactly 2 by 2 inches and the middle piece is only 1/2 inch wide. Okay, rows are joined. Again, as with the large block, I pressed seam allowance from the middle row towards the plain square, and for the other rows towards the outer pieces here. And now let's join the rows to make the square complete. Voila, here we are with the small little block. I iron press it as the other one. Oh, I could have made that more open. Okay, give it a good press here too. So, I could play around with those little blocks and then make that a small, nice pin cushion. Or for the larger block, I could make a mug rack or frame it and make a pillow out of it. Let's see what ideas come to my mind. So I hope you had fun with this plus block. If you had as much fun with the Plus block as I did and modern style is your thing, why not join our Pluses Quilt Along? Right now, we plan to start at the end of June. Such a quilt along is always a lot of fun because participants support and help each other. We'll be sewing for 6 weeks, and if you say, oh, that's going to fall right during my vacation time, I probably won't be able to sew with you, then I can promise it will still work, because our tutorials will be on YouTube all the time and you can sew on your own pace. And I can already reveal that it will be very funny because I have a new cameraman on board. He's young, he's not a quilter, and he sometimes teases me with his video edits. So if you want to take part, just use the registration link in the description box below. Because I love simple modern blocks so much, I wrote a complete book about this topic. It's called Modern Building Blocks and it's published by Quiltmania. It's brand new. It's kind of an encyclopedia of 40 modern blocks that you can mix and match to your liking and use in projects. If you need project ideas, there are 6 of them in the book. No modern quilter should be without that reference book in their library. You can find the book on my website where you can order an author-signed copy. I only have a few signed copies, however, I will put the link in the description box below. So now let's jump to the sewing machine so that your block 9 can be finished in time. Bye-bye.